Hello Beach and Birch class and welcome to today's PSHE session. Today we're looking at refugees and asylum and finding out what these phrases mean and how that fits into our lives today. It also links with your reading comprehension, so hopefully will help with your reading comprehension. Let's look at some of the vocabulary we'll be covering today. First of all, refugee. What is a refugee? A refugee is a person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. So it refers to a person who's not looking to go somewhere else on holiday, not looking for a change of scenery, but instead somebody who needs to leave their own country for a while or forever because of something that's happened. It could be war, it could be a natural disaster like a tsunami or an earthquake, but for some reason they need to leave their own country and live somewhere else, at least for a little while. The second word is asylum. Asylum is the protection granted by a state to someone who has left their home country as a political refugee. So if someone's seeking asylum, they're looking to go somewhere, go into a state or a country because they can no longer stay in their own country for a little while. I think this second example explains it really well. Asylum is shelter or protection from danger. So if you've heard the phrase asylum seeker, it's someone who's looking for protection from danger. The next word is persecution. Persecution is hostility and ill treatment, especially because of race or political or religious beliefs and oppression. So some asylum seekers, some refugees have moved from their own country due to persecution, due to some sort of ill treatment, and that could be because of race, politics, or their religion. But for some reason, they are being harassed or harmed in some way. Now that we know those words, we'll be able to watch today's video clip, and I want you to look carefully and listen carefully to some of the examples that are going to be shared, because I want you to think about what you can do to support asylum seekers and refugees.
Imagine suddenly having to leave your home, your friends, your family, your possessions, your country, perhaps because of war or persecution. Without warning, you've left your whole life behind. You're shocked, scared. That happens every day somewhere in the world. People flee their countries because they believe their lives are in danger. This decision to go or to stay must be one of the most difficult anyone could ever have to make. This was a choice facing Zlata Filipovic, a girl caught up in the war in the former country Yugoslavia. She started writing a diary about what happened to her in 1991, just before her 11th birthday. 3 years later, her book, Zlata's Diary, was printed and sold all over the world.
War is no joke, it seems. It destroys, kills, burns, separates, brings unhappiness. Terrible shells fell today on Bashasha, the old town centre. Terrible explosions. We went down into the cellar, and ours isn't even all that safe. Mummy and Daddy and I just stood there, holding on to each other in a corner which looked safe. Standing there in the dark, in the warmth of my parents' arms, I thought about leaving Sarajevo. Everybody is thinking about it, and so am I. The best would be for all three of us to go, but Daddy can't.
I'm from Somalia. I came here because there was a war in Somalia. The first time I went to school is that when I got there and I never knew English. The people laughing at me for no reason because I don't know English. But they said, we don't want you in this country because you're a refugee.
When refugees flee to a country of asylum, many hope that their stay will only be short. Often, though, the persecution or conflict that drove them away continues for months or sometimes even years. So they have to try and make the best of things in a strange land. Some of these children taking part in a school show are from the world's worst war zones. When they first arrive here, they're often nervous and confused. and anxious to have as normal a life as possible. Their school, Salisbury Primary, has over 600 children, and at any one time there could be 100 refugees.
We have what we call a buddying system, where a classmate can become a buddy for a day or a week and sit next to that child and help them, take them to the canteen, just the simple things that we take for granted. That way, the children settle much more quickly. They feel that they have friends and that people want them to learn and want them to be happy.
Over 50 years ago, the international community decided that each of us were equal before the law, and they came up with a Charter for Human Rights which sets out every single right, such as the right to life, the right to education, the right to safety, the right to asylum. The most important right is the right to asylum, and by this I mean that they have the right to seek safety from persecution in another country. The best way of overcoming the hostility to refugees is by understanding why they are forced to come to the United Kingdom. They're fleeing violence and persecution in their own countries. They can't live in their own countries. But secondly, we must get to know them as individuals. It's very easy to just label them as refugees and forget that they are human beings just like us.
Zlata Filipovic, the child who wrote Zlata's diary, did eventually make that tough decision to leave her home in Sarajevo with her family. First they moved to Paris, and some years later she arrived in this country as a student.
Everybody coming into a different country, where they do not have any family, friends, their neighborhoods and customs, where people speak a different language and do things differently, would always have rather stayed with what is familiar and dear to them. But some ugly life circumstances forced them away from their homes. They had to leave, and I did too. I'm now studying in England, but my parents are in Ireland, my friends in Sarajevo and all over the world. I don't even know where my home is anymore. I was lucky enough to have had good experiences wherever I went. Unfortunately, many people are not as lucky as me. They've had to encounter more difficulties in their new places of stay, becoming victims of prejudice. And although I've had good experiences away from home, I still wish I never left. I will now never fully belong back home, nor away from home.
So as you could hear from Zlatla's story and some of the other stories, being a refugee isn't always easy, and it's a big life decision. So I want you to have a think today. What can you do? I would like you to tell me 3 things that you could do to help a refugee. It could be things at school, home, within the community, or by supporting a charity. Remember that there are refugees in our school. You yourself might be a refugee. You might know a refugee without even knowing it. So what can you do at school to make sure that everybody feels welcome, and that everybody in our community feels welcome? There were some ideas in the video, so if you're a little bit stuck, listen again. I'd like to see all of your ideas on Class Dojo. Be really interesting to see what you think you can do to help others. Bye bye.